Tonight, if New Zealand has a rock star economy, is the show only touring the cities, leaving our provinces out in the cold? Maybe, but there are people who do believe our provinces can revive and that there is a future away from the big smoke. Good evening, I'm Sean Plunket. Well, it's been a torrid, dare I say, dirty week in politics. More on that later with my guests, National's Stephen Joyce and Labour's Grant Robertson. But also tonight, how do we get economic growth in New Zealand, not just in the main centres, but right across the country? On the face of it, New Zealand's economy is rocking along. Unemployment's at a 5-year low, lower even than Australia's rate. But economists are noticing a growing divide between our bulging cities and our struggling provinces. Starved of industry and employment and increasingly deserted by the young, are these small centres becoming zombie towns? Joining our politicians on that issue, the commentator who coined the term zombie town, economist Shamabeel Jacob, and a man who reinvigorated one North Island town, former Otahanga Mayor Dale Williams. I'd first like to go to you, Shamabeel. Are you telling us that the zombie town is more than just a name, that there is a real and serious problem here?
There is, and what we've got are places in New Zealand that are small and declining in population. There are not many jobs, and there are communities that seem trapped where they're not able to get out. And in a country of 4.5 million, surely we don't need to have that. Does your analysis tell us that if things keep on going the way they are, that problem will grow? Yeah, well, we've got some places that are continuing to hollow out, and we've got entrenched poverty, very high unemployment rates in certain places, and multiple generations of welfare dependency. And these are things that we can fix, and it's being able to get the community and government working together to be able to solve it that's really important. Do you accept the zombie town?
No, I don't accept the zombie towns, Sean, but I do accept that there is variable growth rates, because there always is. Actually, the regions have largely led New Zealand's economic recovery from the GFC, and the stats show that. Their unemployment's been lower, for example, than Auckland. But there are some regions where there are challenges. One thinks of Northland, obviously, which is one of the areas that's been challenged. And there is a number of things that we can do broadly around encouraging investment in those regions, which is something that we're very focused on doing. Building the skill base of that region, and I see you've got Dale here today who's got a great story to tell, and we've been emulating his stuff around the country with our polytechnics and with our apprenticeships. Encouraging the innovation and doing the things. So you're telling us you're doing all you can right now. There's no need for a policy shift or change. We're working very hard on it, and with the councils. I mean, one of the big examples, of course, is the infrastructure space with ultra-fast broadband, because that is very important. All right, you say enough is being done. It doesn't say enough is being done, but I'm saying we're working hard on it. Okay. Do you accept that? Do you think the current policies are enough to stop the towns going zombie, or not, Grant Robertson?
No, absolutely not. And the reality is, if you go down the main street of Whanganui or Gisborne and you look at all the empty shops and you play the game of thinking what was there the last time I was here, those towns are really struggling, and they need more than the sort of complacent attitude that we get from the government. Do you have specific targeted policies that are different than what's National doing? Absolutely. An example is the Regional Development Fund, $200 million to invest in key infrastructure projects that will be a catalyst to creating jobs, setting up centres of vocational excellence at regional polytechs to build the skill base there. There's a whole range of things we can do in partnership with local communities to build good jobs in all cities and regions. Are you going to make this a priority then, regional growth? Absolutely. I mean, it's a symbolic thing, but we're going to have a Minister for Regional Development who's actually targeted specifically to ensure that all the regions of New Zealand benefit. And $200 million. Dale, is money enough?
Yes, money is enough. I mean, the communities that I've spent time in the last few years, there is enough money, both internally and externally, in communities. What's been lacking is a real partnership between Wellington and local government and the communities. You know, the people and the infrastructure is already there in rural New Zealand. Rural New Zealand has the people. We've got the affordable housing, we've got the cycle trails and the beautiful environment, the parking and the no congestion. And we've even got the jobs in the rural areas too. Real jobs in the trades and in agriculture and in finance, not paper shuffling. And
where is it going wrong?
Well, I think it's this agreement from Wellington to partner with communities, to offer back some confidence and some trust back to communities to be flexible and creative, to create local solutions for local issues. When we first began our renaissance 10 years ago, almost every official and a bureaucrat that we talked to said, it doesn't fit our model, you can't do that. And even when our results exceeded the model, we were still being told that.
There have been a few examples in the term of this government, Stephen Joyce, where Wellington has come in and said, we will run things because we don't trust you.
Oh, I think that's a little bit different. That's Canterbury earthquakes you're talking about there, and it's a pretty big challenge. I agree with Dale, but what we've been doing is actually working with Dale when he's been at the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, because his model's quite a good model. And what we've said, and actually I remember Dale, you saying to us, we've got all the programs in the world now. In fact, you said that we have the money and the programs. It's actually the bit that we can do with the councils, which we are now doing, is making sure that we adopt them effectively to be the local glue to the programs, to bring the local employers together. There's a new project actually in Taranaki now, which is called Taranaki Futures, which is modelled a bit on what Dale did in Otahonga, run by the local MP and the local mayor, and they are doing exactly that. Major employers, the programs, the Polytech, all working together.
You want to speak to that?
Well, I think the problem here is, Dale is fantastic and has done a great job. The issue is we can't rely on just having the luck of a Dale Williams in every region or town. We actually have to have a proper plan that organises that partnership.
And you're saying Stephen Joyce doesn't have a plan?
Well, at the moment, not in all the regions. There are these great regional growth partnerships that the government's looking at. One's been completed. We actually need those right across the country that are partnerships between business, the community, local government and central government. We can't make it work unless we've got that partnership. We can't rely just on individuals.
Shama Bell, I want to bring you in here first. Have you heard anything from these two politicians that would turn around the trends that you've analysed and identified?
I think we're all talking about some pretty big picture stuff. And the thing that's missing for us is still that community conversation that we need to change things, actually accept that there is decline, that it's painful, and it has very costly...
Do we need to accept, no matter what hope the politicians hold out, that some towns in some regions are simply not viable anymore, and they need to be, and I think the term was used by the Royal Society, they need to be red zoned. We need to depopulate them.
And I think what really speaks to that is, what does success look like? Not everyone can be an economic powerhouse. Some places might be beautiful places to live, some places might be retirement home, and some places may not have reticulated water. If you can't accept that not every place can be the same as a mini Auckland, we won't have places that can survive, and some places will have to be one down.
You shook your head there, Stephen Joyce. Are you not going to accept that some places...
Absolutely not. And I'll take Northland as the example. I think we all have, to varying degrees, been a bit frustrated with how Northland has progressed over the last 30 years. Now we're seeing some quite good investment in the region, but there's some key things we can do to ensure that there's more success in that region. One of them is to get the Ngāpuhi settlement done. It's one of New Zealand's largest iwi, and again, I bang on about that a fair bit, because actually having iwi with a treaty settlement in a region who have a commitment to that region economically has been very good for the Waikato. It's been very good for the South.
You say, no, you're not going to close down any towns, you're not going to accept that that's...
It's not our job to do that. If we attract investment into those towns, then they can be built.
Dale, do some places have to accept that they're not going to cut it?
No,
that they haven't got a big enough rate space to provide the sort of services they use?
No, absolutely not, because communities are there to serve the people who choose to be there. I guess the worrying trend is encouraging people to drift to urban areas that are already struggling and facing their own pressures. It's really important that policies that come out of Wellington support communities of all sizes to be sustainable. I mean, in the last few years of my mayoralty, we faced police stations closing, reducing hours, less people, New Zealand Post reducing service, courthouses closing. I mean, try being a 16-year-old in a rural area and access driver's licence training, or public transport to get to their first job. These are daily occurrences.
The economies of providing those services, Shama Bell is telling us, simply aren't there.
Well, they are when the partnership is there. I mean, there are levels of service available to communities. I mean, a community of my size, for example, does not need a massive building in a main street with 25 people and 3 cars and a whole infrastructure to support it. Some of these services can be provided mobile or electronically or a whole lot of different ways. Again, that's that partnership and agreeing that there are different ways to slice the cake.
But we know, Grant Robertson, when you get down to tin tax, local body politicians and locals are loath to give up anything.
Well, yeah, but look, there's been great examples. The Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, which grew out of the work that Dale did, has done fantastic work in being the real engine room of creating jobs. It's about each part of this equation knowing what they're doing. So central government, we can set policy like you'll get more points if you migrate to a provincial city than you will to Auckland. Now, there's some difference now. We believe that should be more. We can make sure that government procurement, the buying of goods and services by government, favours small businesses that are based in the regions. So we're going to do both of those things, immigration and procurement.
Well, actually, that's just been done.
But it hasn't to the extent it should be.
It has just literally been done. And I met a guy in Palmerston North the other day from the United Arab Emirates who's just come in under the new adjusted regional point system and is having a great time in Palmerston North. Because actually one of the interesting things, I think, Dale, it was you that said it, is that there are often jobs in the regions. And when I travel around, this is, I think, an interesting challenge for us all. Take Southland, for example, screaming out for process workers at Stabbycraft. There's people, they're looking for people at Quality. Actually, the jobs are there in a lot of these regional areas. One of the challenges is working against, as you say, that shift to the urban centres. And I think there's more work to be done in that space of making sure that that people understand those jobs are available. South Island as a whole, for example, has unemployment currently 3% lower than the North.
One other solution is getting investment in the provinces and the regions. And one way that is done is by foreigners coming in and buying land in those areas. Now, that's something you're not so keen on, is it?
Certainly not in the way that it's been done at the moment. We believe that actually we need a New Zealand investment base. That's why we're looking at Universal KiwiSaver. That's why we want to transfer over the incentives through a capital gains tax to investing in the productive sector. So, yep, there is always scope for foreign investment where it's going to add jobs beyond what New Zealand can do itself. But I want us to be investing, and it's the same actually with immigration. Yes, let's use immigration to fill the gaps, but let's get the focus on skilling up New Zealanders to take those jobs. And Stephen said earlier about the politics. Well, $60 million has gone out of regional politics in the last few years. That's not the kind of commitment that we need to getting skills.
Would you agree with Grant Robertson, though, we do need to limit foreign investment in the regions?
I think the test, and ironically, the test that Grant seeks is the test that's in place, which is the economic benefit for New Zealand. And so all of these purchases go through exactly that test. Is there something in it for New Zealand? Well, actually, it's written up that way, changed in 2010. But look, I actually think it is broader than that. You're right, you've got to attract investment, both domestically and internationally, but that also implies not doing things that discourage investment. And funnily enough, when you mentioned, Grant, the capital gains tax, the issue with that is that it's a tax on 100% of productive businesses in New Zealand. That's not a way to attract productive investment by taxing it.
Shamabil, I want to ask you, is foreign capital in land going to make a difference to some of the regions?
Why is it so different to have investment in land as opposed to all our other businesses? Our banking system is owned by foreigners. I think it's much more about having the open conversation. Do we want foreign investment in New Zealand? And what is the FDI policy we want to have around it? Land in and of itself, I don't think it's a big issue.
OK. You're ready to have that conversation with New Zealand?
Oh, absolutely. But look, we're clear, and I mean, I think you ask a group of New Zealanders, you'll find that they're very concerned about land being lost to future generations. And that is a conversation we've been having for many years. And I think the outcome of it is that New Zealanders want us to be cautious about that. They don't want to be tenants in our own land.
Let's look at Lochinvar, which you say, your party says it would block. Stephen Joyce, how can you tell me that Lochinvar Station will employ any more people in that region under Chinese ownership than it would under Kiwi ownership?
That's exactly the test. That's the test they have to pass to actually be able to purchase the land.
But you've used the argument that it creates a whole lot of jobs in Auckland.
No, I haven't used that argument at all. I said if Lochinvar is to pass, it will have to be a proof of creating jobs and creating an economic benefit.
Above and beyond what a New Zealand investor would do?
Well, there isn't a New Zealand investor. Somebody has turned up prepared to pay $70 million for the property. But actually, I was in Taupo. Hang on. I was in Taupo the other day, and it's interesting, actually, because it's just outside of Taupo, of course. And I was having a lunch meeting, and a number of people came up afterwards, tradies, guys that work and looking for work around the place. And they actually said to me, well, you know, Stevensons haven't spent much money on that property for the last 20 or so years. If it was going to have some investment and I could get some work, I'd be keen to be part of it.
Let's get it clear, Minister.
Yeah.
Is it that it creates economic benefit on Lochinvar Station, or the freed up money that is paid for Lochinvar Station creates jobs somewhere else? Because that's a completely different
Well, it's a
test.
combination of both, actually. In fact, the proposal, as I understand it, and again, it'll all be tested, is that the Stevensons want to sell their property, which they're, of course, entitled to do, and invest it in a new development, I think it's in rural South Auckland, which is going to create about 8,000 jobs. And the test will be the purchaser, can they make the similar sort of investment in terms of enhancing the property in Taupo?
Stephen Joyce?
No, okay.
No,
Look, the problem here is that this is an entry into the value chain that will mean that the greater value further down, the processing value and so on, will eventually be lost to New Zealand.
Why?
That's why what Shanghai Pension wants here. They want to be able to control the value chain, get that product overseas, and we lose the value.
And would you say we disregard all those jobs that might be created in Auckland through the steel?
Look, there's a lot of way that jobs can be created, but what we're talking about here is land that New Zealanders want us to be able to own. It is a distinction for us.
OK, I want to ask you, Dale, do people out in the provinces who want to keep what they've got and have a future care who owns the land?
Yes, they do. They do, because obviously the landowners in the future will be employing the young people that are coming through those communities, so that there's very much a vested interest. You'll find that rural and provincial people care greatly about who is the landowners. I personally think that New Zealanders have traded right to occupy, right to use, Māori lease, Crown lease agreements for the last 100 years, and it's been both acceptable and adequate. And I think that we need to be looking at some smorgasbord of options for foreign investment. We definitely want the foreign investment, but aren't entirely certain that foreign ownership in its entirety is the way we should be going.
We started with you, Shamabeel Jacob. I want to finish with you. Have you heard anything today that gives you hope that the zombie apocalypse for the regions can be averted?
Shamabeel's zombie apocalypse.
Well, I hope we do. I didn't hear anything about education, not enough. I think that's a massive thing. Poverty alleviation, didn't really talk about that. That's really, really important. We need to get that really right. And the final thing is the community engagement. We have to work much harder on that. If we can't do that, it's not going to work.
Maybe we've only started the conversation. Dale, Grant, Stephen, Shamabeel, thank you for your time. Next, dirty politics. What do the revelations about right-wing bloggers really mean? Stay tuned.